Another Wednesday night edition of Sports Conversation on the Fighting Boys Network, and we look forward to having our guests all around the country chat about what's happening in the world of sports. As always, Roy Cummings is in Tampa. A lot of news there today, and we'll get to that in just a couple of moments. And, of course, Roger Hendler is in Atlanta. A lot of noise there as well. But let's go, first of all, to our executive producer, Frank Carroll. Frank, another bad day for some of the people working under your tutelage.
Right. First of all, we wanted to say thank you to all those who've served. Veterans Day is not a day that's been certified by many, and especially in New York at this point in time. But for those men and women who've served, we appreciate everything you've done. We thank you for your service. For the Gold Star families that lost someone in the battle, we are deeply indebted to you because freedom isn't free, and everybody knows that. And these guys gave their all just to make us free. We also had some major problems this week. In Miami-Dade, a deputy was responding to a call, and when he got out of his car, a guy shot him dead. Up in Ohio, in Columbus, there was a domestic altercation. The officer went into the apartment and got stabbed on the way in and died on the scene. And we also had a lady out at the California Highway Patrol who was involved in a collision and did not survive. And then we had a 555 box out of New York where a young man, 34 years old, a firefighter, had a heart attack in the middle of a major fire and passed away. To all those in blue and green and red and brown, we sincerely back you every single day. We do dedicate these programs at the end of every program. We dedicate it to you. We appreciate you. We want to thank you for your service.
Frank, thank you very much. And of course, a sad note, week in and week out, and you touched on it before we went on the air, how the tough time they're having in almost every county in Florida and a lot of others that just aren't able to fill positions because everybody's a little bit frightened right now.
Yes, sir. There's a very large number of positions open in Hillsborough County, Pinellas County, Manatee County, Sheriff's, and Sarasota, and Lee County.
Well, all we can do is hope for the best. They come out and sacrifice their lives and their time every day with their families, and we certainly thank them and appreciate their service. And now we'll try to get to the world of sports, and as I said a moment ago, we're going to go down to Tampa first, TNT, and I am sure we were watching the pregame show as well, and a player that was with the Lightning, left the Lightning, and now back with the Lightning, and they featured him on the pregame show tonight on TNT. What does this mean to the Lightning?
You guys will have to bring me up to date on who's back.
Yanni.
Oh, Yanni Gord?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were saying somebody today got moved back to the Lightning.
No.
That happened last year. Yeah, well, you know what? The whole idea of bringing Yanni Gord back a year ago at the trade deadline was to kind of bring back some of that grit that they were missing, some of that some of the glue really that made this team cohesive, and give them somebody more than anything. Give them somebody who could stand up to the toughness that Florida usually provides come playoff time, and it didn't quite work out that way. It wasn't. It didn't, pan out the way they wanted to. But look, I think Yanni Gord, he's about as true blue a Lightning player as you could find. He's right up there with Hedman, Stamkos, and some of those guys, and he kind of epitomizes what the Lightning really want to be. Most people point to, Braden Point or Nikita Kucherov, certainly Hedman, and they're right to do so. But at the heart of what the Lightning really want to be, what they know they have to be in order to go deep into the playoffs and win another Stanley Cup, you need players like Yanni Gord, somebody who who's got enough skill to put the puck in the net on occasion, but more than anything, can stick his nose in there and get dirty a little bit. Create a little bit more space for other players. and that's what the whole objective was. It's why they re-signed him this year after bringing him back last year. So, a very important player really in the scheme of things, because what this team seems to be lacking, and it's certainly found its footing here in the last week or so, but at the beginning of the year you could sense it still. What the Lightning seem to be lacking a little bit is just a little bit of the glue that made them so good and so cohesive during their Stanley Cup runs. And I don't know if that's Steven Stamkos being gone and other voices having to be heard as the leaders now. Victor Hedman's certainly a solid captain, but Steven Stamkos really carried a lot of weight in that room. And since that's been missing, it's been a little bit different for this team. Now, granted, they've had to go out just like every team that succeeds in the cap era has to do. The Blackhawks had to do it. Other teams have had to do it. You're going to lose these spare parts. You call them spare parts, but they're the guys who you can afford to get rid of, but almost can't afford to get rid of. Guys like Yanni Gourde, Stamkos, people who are, you think you can replace them, but maybe you can't, and maybe they provide more than just what you see on the score sheet some nights. And that's what Yanni Gourde does. So
that's pretty much word for word what they said on TNT tonight on the pregame show. And
there you go.
That's what they were, the whole last 8 or 10 minutes of the show was all around. He was on there, of course, with them. But, I mean, it was a very, very interesting 10-minute segment there. One last question before we swing into some of the sports of the day, and that is your quarterback's going to get another shot in New York. Shannon's going to get the start on Sunday. Jameis Winston.
Oh, okay. Jameis Winston gives you a start. Well, they're down to second, third quarterback there. So good for Jameis. I hope he does well. I'm sure he will. If the defense can hold a lead for him, that would be nice. If he can avoid trying to make too much out of certain plays, he should succeed. He's a good quarterback. Just has a penchant for always trying to do a little bit too much at the wrong time. And so good for him. I'll be anxious to watch him play. Hope he succeeds. He's a good kid and a pretty darn good quarterback.
You saw a lot of him when he was in Tampa.
Yeah, I sure did. And what I saw was a guy who, helped turn Mike Evans into a Hall of Fame candidate, and carried this team for a number of years and made them about as good as they could be when he had a defense that really couldn't hold up, hold the leads that he provided, which he did a lot of that. He played very well, and then he'd get out there and he'd be down a score or two and feel like he had to do too much and more than he was, should have been doing. And next thing you know, you got a pick going the other way. So, but he's a good quarterback and a good kid. And I wish him the best. I didn't realize that had happened today, but happy to hear it because I'm looking forward to seeing him play. I hope he does well.
Roger, down there in Atlanta, you and I, and of course many others, watching the Eagles over the last weekend, and of course what a game they played, 10-7. First time, what they say, since 1952 or something like that they had a scoreless first half. I can't remember the exact year, to be honest with you. But
no, it was 2 years ago.
What, 2?
Yeah, for the no score in the first half. But I just want to say, follow up with what you and Roy were saying. I think so many times teams realize that they made a mistake. As Roy was saying, they contribute a lot of things. I think also in the locker room is a significant factor in bringing guys back. I mean, what they can do to younger players and the impact that they can have. And the other thing was about the Giants. I thought it was interesting. The interim head coach is Mike Kapka, who was a quarterback with the Eagles a number of years ago. I think he's like 38. And the other thing is with Jameis Winston, I had no idea the guy's over 30 years old. You think that he's still a kid, young guy playing, but he's 30 or a little older. And but on that game Monday night, I mean, if you want a tremendous defensive effort, you got that game. Everybody's happy. But it's not what I think most people wanted. And they were talking about today. I didn't see Sirianni's press conference, but I heard some things. And there's a criticism that it's a simple offense, and they don't know whether it's designed that way for Hurts or whether that's just the growing pains of the offensive coordinator who was the quarterback's coach last year when they won the Super Bowl. So, I think only time will tell. They won the game. That's the bottom line. As Hurts said, he doesn't care about the statistics. He's just interested in getting a W. Well said. Roy?
Yeah, I got to agree 100% with Roger. First of all, back to the Yanni Gordon thing real quick. If it weren't for expansion, he probably never would have left the Lightning. And because he's such an important piece of the puzzle there, he probably never would have left the Lightning. But you had to expose somebody in the way and the amount of money the teams are paying now to get into these leagues. They got to make them competitive. It's not like it was like when the Lightning first came in and they were getting the 25th player on a team's roster. You're getting the 8th, 9th, 10th, 12th player on a roster now. So but back to the Monday night game, agree 100% with what Roger said. Look, on the road, tough environment, good team, Packers. You win the game. That's all that matters. Come January, nobody's going to look back and say, "Oh yeah, well they only beat the Packers 10-7." Doesn't matter. You win in the playoffs 10-7. Nobody's criticizing your offense as being not good enough. Was it a simple offense? I don't know. We were complaining earlier in the year. We weren't, but a lot of people were complaining earlier in the year about the lack of use of Saquon Barkley. What happened to that? Well, okay, when you run the ball, that's going to probably lead to what appears to be more of a simplified offense. But at the end of the day, Jalen Hurts does have some limitations as a quarterback. There are some certain aspects of the game that he's not really good at. He's going to throw the ball more to the outside, and when you throw it outside, you're going to throw it short. You're not going to throw a lot of stuff between the numbers, and he's going to lean on the running game. So, is that simple? I suppose, I guess, maybe, I don't know. But at the end of the day, it's a matter of execution, and I think the Eagles, to me, they showed me something. They showed me that they can go up against a really good team on the road, tough environment. First night of the year when it was probably really cold for them too, and that's an adjustment you have to make. And they came out and won the game, played solid overall. So, I think it was a really good effort by them.
Rangers just took a 1-0 lead over the Lightning, and they're playing in Tampa, of course, tonight. And Roy covered them for so many years. But let me go back to football here for a second, because this is a pretty big week for Buccaneers once again, having lost this weekend. And now they got the Bills, who really were surprised over the weekend. So they're going to be ready to play. Your thoughts on that one, Roy?
Yeah, I think there's certainly more. There's questions about both teams right now, because the Bucs obviously came out very hot. Despite some injuries, started very, very strong. And now they seem to have come back to earth a little bit. Injuries have a lot to do with that. You're missing your two best receivers. Very tough to run a dynamic offense when you're missing your two best receivers. If your third best receiver is a rookie. So tough to do. Also missing their top running back. Doesn't mean they can't run the ball. I think they've got a very good running rope. But I saw the injury report today, and both Chris Godwin and Bucky Irving, their top running back, Bucky Irving, both limited in practice, which means they were out there working today. So is the possibility there that they're back this week? Could be. One of them could be back. Both could be back. And either one would give this team a major boost in a very important game for them, because they're in a stretch here, arguably the toughest stretch of their season, coming off the bye. Some very tough teams. Lost last week, obviously. Need to kind of find their footing again. Seem to have a pretty good hold right now on the division, but all of a sudden Carolina looks pretty good too. And, I just won't count Atlanta out until they're out. But at the end of the day, they've got to start, the belief was going into this 3-game stretch, if they could go 2-1 in this stretch, they'd be in great shape. And all that considering the injuries that they're dealing with here, because again, they just got their right tackle back. They're missing their best pass rusher, and Hassan Reddick, he's still out. So a lot going on there. But they're going up against a team that all of a sudden there are probably more questions about the Bills now than there are about the Bucks, because the Bills, let's face it, everybody expected them to dominate their division, go to the playoffs, get there easily, go deep, probably play the Chiefs, and could they win it there? I mean, that was really the question. Can they get to the playoffs against the Chiefs and win and beat the Chiefs in the playoffs and get to the Super Bowl? That was the question. Well, now there's questions about whether they can even get to the playoffs and how good they'll be there. So a lot of questions about the Bills right now and what's going on there. There's questions about the coach, not too many questions about the quarterback. But at the end of the day, Josh Allen's got to, step it up a little bit too. So a really intriguing game here, because you got two teams that all of a sudden are trying to find their way again. And we didn't necessarily expect that a month into the season from these two teams.
Roger, we could say basically the same thing about the Steelers. They seem to have the season underway in pretty good shape. Rodgers was playing well. And I just have to say, in looking at his last performance, that was even as bad as he was when he was with the Jets. I mean, he really had a terrible, terrible night. Fumbled in the end zone for a safety, a couple of interceptions, really took his team out of the game 1, 2, 3 right at the beginning.
Amen. And, only getting a field goal in the game. And they had a good game the week before. But I agree about with Roy about the Bills. I'm concerned about them. But, the surprise is the Patriots, in my opinion. I mean, they are looking very good. They got a really good young quarterback. And, I was always a Mac Jones fan. I didn't think he was handled properly. And the Rangers just scored again. But the other thing about that is that the look at the difference when you get a great coach that really knows what he's doing, takes over, has some personnel decisions, has a really good staff, and the job that he's done with the Patriots, to me, is tremendous. And I think they are to be reckoned with right down to the end of the season.
I would agree with that. They're a third 3-point choice over the Jets, which isn't surprising, which is they're going to be playing at home up in Foxborough. And I have to agree with you. They've got a schedule right now with the Jets coming up next with a solid lead. And I think he has done a great job coaching that team so far, Roy.
Yeah, he really has. Mike Vrabel, has done a really good job. And give Josh McDaniels credit, too. I mean, he's back where he belongs, probably where he should have been all along. You certainly can't knock the guy for taking a shot at being a head coach when the opportunity comes to you. And but look, he's a coordinator, and as good a one as there is. And he has coached up Drake May in a way. Drake May, okay, kid out of North Carolina, gym rat kind of kid, family of athletes, brothers who are quarterbacks and soccer players, and really good at it. And you expect the kid to have some talent, but I don't know that anybody expected him to be as good as he is. And he's really benefiting right now, from a really smart offensive approach. I mean, you look at the system there right now. It's designed. It's three-step drop and fire. I mean, they're not giving defenses much time to adjust to the patterns and things like that. They're not forcing May to have to go through a lot of progression. Okay. They're protecting him well, and they're setting him up for success, really, and he's taking advantage of it. Okay. So talk about a simplified offense. I mean, they've got it right there in New England, and it's working so well for them. So plus the defense has really stepped up in a big way. And again, I think it's Mike Vrabel who just he coaches in a way that allows players to be relatable. He relates to players extremely well, which I think is something that Bill Belichick was losing. And you're right, Roger, again, Mac Jones is a guy who probably is worse off for going to New England under Belichick because he kind of had to, resurrect his career just after a couple of years. And there's nothing wrong with Mac Jones, another good, solid quarterback who just needed to be in the right place. And you know what? As we talked earlier about Jameis Winston, that's so important. It's so important for quarterbacks to go to the right place and for teams to be patient with them. I mean, look at Chicago. the patience is actually paying off now with Caleb Williams. You know, a year ago they were ready to dump this kid, get rid of him. And if you watched him last week, he just looked. He looked like a 5 or 6 year veteran as opposed to, you know, the second year pro that he is.
Right.
And Pro Football Focus, I don't know if you guys, you know, follow it closely, but you know, one of the analytics websites has him as the highest passer rating in the league over the last 2 weeks, and one of the highest passer ratings in the league over the course of the season, even. So the kid's actually playing pretty well, and really, it's a matter of sticking with him, giving him a couple of tips here and there to get him, get him beyond the step where he was at the start of the season, and they've done a good job there with him. Again, it's really just a matter of patience, especially with quarterbacks, and so much is expected of these guys. And if they don't have a lot around them, it can be tough for them. So it takes time with a lot of guys, and I think we're starting to realize now that when you draft a player high, first round, no matter where you took him in the first round, first overall or 22nd overall, it really doesn't matter. What matters is that you stick with that kid for a year or 2, 3 years. You know, let him sit on the bench for a while and learn some things before you throw him to the wolves. And you'll probably be better off for it. The investment will pay off more handsomely for you.
Roger, let's move down to you in Atlanta, because every time I think Atlanta's taking a step forward, they take a step back. You see them every week. You're right there. What do we got?
Well, you get very depressed every week. The Lightning just scores, so it's 2-1. But you're right, Don. And, you know, I'm interested in Roy's assessment of Raveen Mars. Roy, do you think he's right now on a tenuous situation as head coach of the Falcons, the way they are so inconsistent, and I think they make a lot of mistakes, and that really, I think, sends a signal that there's an issue there.
Yeah, I do see some things there on both sides of the ball that suggest that this team is not coached up as well as it needs to be. Look, the biggest issue is the quarterback situation. And Penix was hurt for a week. That hurt him. He's going to be inconsistent even when he's healthy. That hurts them. Comes back, maybe not 100%. That hurts them. But you do have one of the best running backs in the league, and I'm not sure that they've really leaned on that enough. They've also, let's not ignore the fact that, they suffered a little bit because their special teams hasn't been great. So there's a lot going on there, a lot going on. And normally, and I'm not saying that he's not on the hot seat. I'm not saying that he's, one loss away from getting fired, just like Brian Daboll was. But what I believe is that with Rich McKay in that building still, and the ownership group, I think they believe in Raheem. I really do. And I think they believe he at least deserves the rest of this year and probably next year, although he's got to pick it up. I'm sure that's the feeling. Knowing the people involved who are making those decisions and knowing Raheem, I think the feeling inside the building is, all right, he's still our guy, and we believe in him 100%, but we got to see some improvement here. I think the belief is that the pendulum's got to be on the upswing over the course of the second half of the season. There's still a chance for these guys to get back into the race here, especially if Tampa fades a bit. And I think that's what they want to see. It's going to be tough to do with a young quarterback and a defense that maybe not as good as we thought. And that may be part of it too. We may have overestimated the defense just a little bit. But yeah, look, the seat's getting hot, and rightfully so. I think he survives, but if he doesn't, I certainly wouldn't be surprised. I'd be disappointed because I think he's got the chops to do it. He just needs a little bit more to work with than what he's got right now.
Maybe the biggest game of the weekend for the Chiefs. Ron Reed, of course, has had tremendous success.
This is Steve.
Hey, Steve, it's Frank. How you doing?
Good.
Good. All right, I'm going to put your mic live. We're just finishing up with Roy Cummings.
Okay.
Think on the Chiefs. it's the Broncos. I mean, Sean, has just done a fantastic job in the last couple of years since he took over. And, I mean, they got a really good quarterback, done a great job. I mean, the Eagles had that game taken away. They should have won that game against Denver, but that was because they didn't have that correct call at the end on pass interference, or that game would have been in the Eagles' favor. But you have plenty of opportunities in a game, and sometimes you don't take advantage of it. But I do think that I can see Denver beating the Chiefs in this game coming up. That wouldn't surprise me at all.
Roy, I'll tell you, he's really coached that Denver team up in the last 2 years, and they're now really showing it going into the second half of this year and really making their mark again.
Yeah, no doubt, and no surprise. Look, one of the better coaches in the league. We've known that for since he was in New Orleans. But at the end of the day, talk about young quarterbacks struggling. Bo Nix hasn't been as sharp as a lot of people thought he would be. He's probably better last year than he has been so far this year. Just looks a little bit uncomfortable right now. Don't know if he's dealing with an injury. Don't know if it's some new chapter in the playbook that he's not comfortable with. But something's not quite right with him, and it makes me think that Denver is vulnerable here in this game. I can, as Roger says, can absolutely see them winning this game. I don't think the Chiefs are what they used to be under Andy Reid. Even after getting some of their players back, they still seem vulnerable themselves. But at the end of the day, I think this one comes down to the better, smarter, more experienced quarterback. It's a great matchup because you got two of the best head coaches in the game, two potential Hall of Fame coaches, certainly a Hall of Fame quarterback in Patrick Mahomes, and Bo Nix, who's looked just looks a little bit off. So this is a great matchup, an exciting one to watch, and it'll obviously have a lot to say about who wins that division. A division that I think you can expect the both teams to fight for it, and here they are in this battle. So it'll be a good one.
Roger, Eagles at home, coming off a tough game in Green Bay, and it wasn't as cold as I thought it was going to be. It was cold, but not really a shaky cold. And they're a 2.5 point favorite over the Lions. The Lions have been another team that all of a sudden, one day they look good, and the next day you don't know what they're doing.
Well, you're right. And Roy's assessment about Vrabel with New England, the players coach, same thing with with Detroit with Dan Campbell, players coach. But this should be interesting. Sunday night game, and that's the big night of the year. And at least it's if you have YouTube TV, it doesn't affect you because they just aren't carrying anything from Disney, which is ridiculous. But it should be a good game. I really think it'll be a good matchup. I think the Eagles will probably rev up the offense. When we talk about Patrick Mahomes, the one thing that I see with him is when he runs, he seems to be much faster than Jalen Hurts when he runs. And I don't know whether other people or you guys look at it that way or not, but it's just that feeling I get that he really is so much quicker running than Hurts is. Roy, Don, Frank, what do you think?
I think it is? I think Patrick Mahomes is more committed when he runs, whereas I don't think Jalen Hurts is. I think when Jalen Hurts runs,
that's it.
I think you realize it's like, okay, I'm running here because I have to. Whereas I think Patrick Mahomes a lot of times runs because he wants to. He sees it as a better option, much like Baker Jackson does. I think he just sees it as a better option, whereas with Hurts, I think he's such a, I don't want to say a system quarterback, but he's kind of so much about, he's not a freelancer. That Jalen Hurts is not a freelancer. Patrick Mahomes is. And if you're not a freelancer, your mind is kind of set on, okay, this is the play, let's run this play. And if it breaks down, well, then I've got to look for another option. But the last option for him is probably running the ball because, again, That makes sense because of all the weapons he's got. Whereas I think Jalen Hurts doesn't consider himself to be that weapon with his team, whereas Patrick Mahomes certainly does. Baker Mayfield certainly does. Those guys willing to take that run, and they're willing to commit to it, whereas I think Jalen Hurts is always a little bit hesitant to really do that. Is this really the best thing for us right now for me to run this ball?
Right.
That's kind of how I see it.
Well, I would agree with that. Only I would add one thing to it. What really defines what you're saying is that Jalen Hurts, when he runs the ball, is looking for the sidelines. He wants to get out of bounds.
There you go.
Whereas the other quarterbacks that you're referring to are quarterbacks that will put their nose in and stay in and try to get the extra 5 or 10 yards running the football themselves. So, and also, I think Jalen Hurts is very, very conscious of the fact that he has, I don't really have small hands or what it is, but he has a tendency to fumble the ball.
Yeah.
And so I think that's also a factor.
I think that all plays into it, guys, 100%.
Hey, Don.
All right, that's finished our first half hour off. And Roy, once again, thank you very, very much. We covered a lot of different topics here, and we'll continue next week as well. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Roy.
Always, sure appreciate it. Yes, guys, have a good week. Take care.
All right, Roy always contributes in so many different fields and so much opportunity to talk to Roy about so many different topics. It makes the first half hour just a lot of fun. And
it goes quickly.
Oh, it certainly does. Steve Kellogg is going to go join us next.
He's here. He's here
already.
Yes,
okay,
sir.
Steve, our baseball statistician. But what I'd like to do before we get to our baseball statistician, well, first of all, your thoughts on what's happened in the last week about these two pitchers. I mean, one guy's an all-star. They're both outstanding pitchers, and I looked at the tapes. I looked at what they're using as evidence that they threw the first pitches each time and down into the dirt, and that was convincing evidence that they were trying to set up a bet. I don't know. I don't know enough about it. Steve, you're a statistical man. What do you think?
Well, you wouldn't want me on a jury if they were using just statistics and saying, well, the odds and probabilities of this first pitch being this awful are X. I would never, ever, ever put someone's freedom in jeopardy off of statistics, even if it's really skewed. What they do have is they have a lot of communication back and forth. They have wire transfers. They have dialogue going with the wire transfers. If I was on the jury for Emmanuel Clase, you would not want me on that jury. With Luis Ortiz, it's a little bit more sketchy. I would be very hesitant to say 100% from what I've read that they got him nailed to the wall. They don't seem to have as much on him, but Clase they have going back to 2023. This is
right.
This is not statistics. This isn't them looking at a chart and saying, Clase's 80% of his pitches are here, and these 20% are not. It's a lot more, but it's been going on for a long time. Gambling in sports. I mean, we all remember, Henry Hill back in the Goodfellas days. What he ended up, getting Jimmy Conway set up for was throwing basketball games up at Boston University, and then you got to remember, back in the day, going back to my childhood with Roy Hinson was point shaving. This has been going on for a long time. And luckily with legalized sports betting, this stuff gets flagged right away, and these guys are going to get nailed if you try to do it. Why they do it has to be a function of a low IQ, needing the excitement and adrenaline. Maybe they get tired of their friends asking them for money, so instead of them going in their pocket and giving them money, they come up with another scheme to allow their friends to make money off of them. And they don't think about the consequences. That's why I reference IQ. A child doesn't think of the consequences of their actions.
Right.
And to me, it's just a function of these are 14, 15-year-old boys that grew up and never got out of that mental space, and they're going to pay it, and they're going to pay a price for it.
Roger?
Well, I'll tell you, Steve, you hit a couple of good points there about history, because we remember Paul Hornung and Alex Karras got suspended for gambling, back in the day. And then in Philadelphia, Frank Don and I are very familiar with St. Joe's and the three guys that got in trouble for shaving points, which was just a total shock and embarrassment
under Jack Ramsey.
Under Jack Ramsey,
That cost Dr. Ramsey his job.
Yeah, it did. You're exactly right, Frank. And I know, we were shocked. And I'll never forget when the Big Five book came out about the history. This good friend of mine, he's since passed away in Washington Crossing, was best friends with, I think it was Vince Kempton. And he knew nothing about this situation. And when he read the book, thank God, he was going to give it to Vince Kempton. And boy, when he read it, that was the last thing he was going to do. So it's that. But yeah, you're right, Steve. We've said this on the show many times. This is just the beginning of a lot of issues with gambling because the way sports has brought it into their portfolio with all the sponsors.
Well, there's nothing the sports have nothing to do with bringing it in as sponsors. Whether or not the sports bring it in as sponsors is going to be prevalent in society. It's a legal thing like alcohol or cigarettes or anything else. It's just another vice that people have. It has nothing to do with if Major League Baseball suddenly said we're not going to endorse any of these FanDuels or DraftKings, it doesn't change the landscape at all of gambling, athletes getting involved in gambling, the people getting involved in gambling. It wouldn't make a pinprick a difference. Like I said, this has been going on in sports for a long time by players and athletes. I got up to Roy Hinson in the 80s. You guys mentioned St. Joe's. You can get into Tim Donaghy, the referee.
Mm-hmm.
There's a major league umpire that talked about gambling in a book. I can't remember his name. I don't think it was Dave Palumbo, but it may have been. Pete Rose. He's not the only one that was gambling on baseball. This is something that's been going on way before legalized sports gambling. I mean, it's been able to gamble in Vegas all throughout sports. It's been out there at the sports book. So it's not anything to do with a new thing. This isn't new that's going on. It's just much easier to catch people now. It's like elbow surgeries in baseball. Oh, there's so many of them. Well, they couldn't catch them before. When Herb Score was laid up for 2 years, they just said he had a sore arm. They didn't have an MRI machine to say, hey, by the way, his elbow's ripped apart. So it's a matter of technology, boom in population, and much easier to get caught, and then when you do get caught, it gets reported on nationwide, so, a lot of people may not have been exposed to the Roy Hinson point shaving outside of Cleveland and the college community or St. Joe's or Boston or stuff like that. But with the internet today, I mean, once you bust somebody, it's going to be breaking news, nationally, internationally. So,
every minute.
Isn't it something? I mean, we had, back in the day, these athletes are actually shielded from the media. We've all heard the stories of the shenanigans of Mickey Mantle and the Yankees running around town late at night that never got reported. And now, if a guy steps out of a cab at 2 a.m., it's all over the internet.
See, let's get to baseball. Let's get to some baseball hard facts here for a minute, because nobody knows more about stats than you do. And so that brings it to mind for me anyway. I don't know what the personal problems are with Cashman with the Yankees, but he is not at the general manager's meeting this week. And if there's a team that really needs their general manager and somebody on focus, it's the New York Yankees, as it does for the New York Mets and other teams. But as we take a look at it, everything in the Post today lists all the players that are available. Well, the Yankees should go out and buy the left-handed pitcher who happens to be the number one player on the Detroit roster, who took him into the playoff. Why in the world, in my view, would you even think about trading a player like that to the New York Yankees or anybody?
Well, if you're Detroit, you're talking about Tariq Skubal. Now, first of all, let me go back. Anybody who thinks, I'm so tired of people saying that the Yankees don't win the World Series, fire Cashman, or there's a problem.
Oh, I'm not saying fire him.
They lost Luis Gil, they lost Garrett Cole, they lost Jonathan Lazagia. They lost Aaron Judge to the IL for a period of time.
Right.
The third baseman got old and decrepit, and they had nobody playing defense on the infield. And somehow that team, again, gets into the playoffs. Again, Brian Cashman did enough depth that he didn't take a step back like the New York Mets or many other teams. He got into the playoffs and gave them a chance to win. The guy does everything right in New York, and people still wonder what more can he do? And the answer is he has to win a World Series. I understand that is the threshold, but, him and Boone, I would laugh if anybody ever decided to replace either one of them and just say, well, it didn't work, we need to go in a different direction. That's just my opinion. But when it comes to Tariq Skubal, I'll put it in terms that I can hopefully give you three pitchers that basically told their respective teams, I'm not taking a discount, and I'm going to reset the market for pitchers. Now, Skubal's a little bit older, and he can't really take that much leverage, but I'll give you three guys that kind of laid out that they're going to go to the market and be the rising tide to lift all boats. Cliff Lee, CC Sabathia, and David Price. Happen to all be lefties like Skubal. Cleveland had no chance of signing Cliff Lee or CC Sabathia. They traded both of them.
Right.
And the Rays had no chance. David Price came out and said, I want to stay in Tampa Bay, but I also want to be the highest paid pitcher of all time. Now, that's an oxymoron for most markets. Highest paid position player, highest paid pitcher of all time. You're not signing Milwaukee or Pittsburgh or Cleveland or Tampa Bay or Oakland. That's not going to happen. So Tariq Skubal is going to be one of those guys. He's not going to challenge for the highest net all time. He's not going to get the $400, $500 million contract, but he could push that AAV up for everybody and get up to $45 million a year. So Detroit can say, okay, we can make one more effort to get across the finish line with Tariq Skubal, our horse at the top, and get a compensation pick for him, or make an offer first if we think he might sign, or we can trade him now and get more than the perceived compensation pick plus the ability to contend next year. They could still do it, but it'd be a little bit more difficult, similar to Corbin Burns leaving the Brewers and the Brewers continuing to chug along and be in the playoffs and threaten for the World Series. So it's kind of, we'll just say they're in the Milwaukee Brewers stage of what do we do with Skubal? And that's a decision that front office has to make. I don't think ownership's going to say, hey, let's write a check for, a 6-year contract worth $250 million. I don't see that happening. So
I agree 100%. The other thing is also want to congratulate Murphy for becoming the manager of the year again. With Milwaukee, what a job he did. Didn't turn out in the World Series, but certainly did an outstanding job. But unfortunately, Roger, the Phillies are in pretty much the same situation with players that they have that are right on that line of where they're going to go, or are they going to stay?
Well, that's exactly right, Don. And one of the things I heard this afternoon was that there are people, including the Mad Dog, Christopher Russo, that only feels that the big markets, by that being the two in L.A., mainly the Dodgers, and then the two in New York, and then possibly the Phillies, would be able to handle a contract like that for the pitcher. And that's that could be. And but the other thing is, what do you think, Steve? Nobody is going to really take on his salary if they cannot get a longer-term commitment and contract with him if they make the trade. What do you think about that?
Now, I wouldn't look at it in that terms, because you take a look at Corbin Burns going to Baltimore in the last year of his deal, and Baltimore did not retain him.
Mistake.
Well, it's the game. It works both ways. You can trade for a guy and hope to extend him. And the trade-off is you may not be able to extend him, but that's baked into the price of what you give up to get him. So a GM can't say, I'm going to unload my farm and get him on a 1-year deal and then not extend him. And the trade wasn't a big taxing trade for Baltimore. Okay, I think Joey Ortiz may be the highlight of that deal. He's a marginal type player, but they didn't, they didn't give up the top of their market. They didn't give Holiday up, or they didn't give up anything huge to go get Corbin Burns, but they took the money back. So
how about their pitcher and their designated hitter? I should say, not their pitcher, their catcher and their designated hitter, who hit 56, 57 home runs last year.
Yeah, for the Phillies.
Yeah,
both of them are free agents, Steve.
Yeah. The free agent market, it has to take a little bit of time to see how it goes. I think Real Muto's a free agent, correct?
Yes, he is. Yeah.
Yeah. You would think he'd be happy staying in Philadelphia and they'll work something out. That'd be my guess, is that they're going to want to, coming from a market like Tampa Bay, where catching is always, something that's like a big bottle of water in the desert. You wish you had it. If you get a Real Muto, you're going to want to hold on to him. And at the stage, the beautiful thing about free agents when they get in their 30s, is they shouldn't be demanding top-end money, and you should be able to work out a deal, because it'll be, even if you have to pay more dollars per year, you should be able to limit your exposure to 2 or 3 year deals, which means sitting down in a room and getting a deal worked out is much easier when a player's on the other side of 30 than when they're, when they're on the 27, 28 side. They're looking for that big 6-7 year deal. So I think Real Muto will stay.
Steve, as you look at the Dodgers, they have an unlimited amount of money to spend, regardless of what the taxes are and all the rest of it. They don't seem to care. Are they gonna keep going like this? I mean, is it going to be another year, 11 out of 12, that that they're not only win the National League East, but win the National League and go to the World Series or whatever? I mean, it's unbelievable.
Well, yeah, I mean, Andrew Friedman does it the right way. He stocks the team with not only free agents, but players from the system and international players, and he has a great farm system to supplement things. And you have kind of a rotating payroll where you got all this money on the books. But remember, they took $90 million off the books just this week. None of it played a big role in the World Series, by the way. Clayton Kershaw was in there. Kirby Yates was in there. I'm trying to remember the other guys. $90 million came off the books. Tony Gosselin came off the books, arbitration guy and all that. But $90 million comes off the books, and they're willing to reinvest that $90 million back into the club. And just like every team in baseball, you develop a baseline of what you're willing to spend on payroll. And it basically is consistent all the way through baseball. We have 30 different markets with 30 different salary structures. Most teams don't go way above or way below unless you're tearing it down. So the Dodgers are at a certain level, like the Mets and the Phillies and some other teams, and they're going to spend at that level. And the trick is to always be rotating guys in and out. So $90 million come off the books. Now you look at the free agent market; they have $90 million that they can put into that team without being without disrupting their payroll model. A few teams, by the way, I was going to bring this up, and the team to watch this winter will be the Padres. And in my life, and you guys can remember a few of these guys, when you have an old owner that wants one more title before they win, they do some crazy things that have a detrimental effect on the market after they pass away. The first guy you guys may remember would be Bennett. I can't remember his first name, for the Orioles in the 80s. And
Edward Bennett Williams.
Edward Bennett Williams. He put a lot of money into that team and wanted that one last World Series. And when he passed away, that franchise, they just had to cut and, expense.
It drowned.
Now, we can't really get angry at him because he was trying to get that one last title. The other guy that was what I call a philanthropy owner was Illich in Detroit, who was like, okay, we're going to spend money on everybody. I'm going to give a Lifetime Achievement Award to Mickey Cabrera. I'm going to give a Lifetime Achievement Award to Justin Verlander. we're going to make a run. He passes away. The family takes over, and they cut the payroll by 140, 150 million. And now you have to wonder where the San Diego Padres are going to go. Their owner passed away, I think, a year ago. But he really went way in on signing everything he could to try to get that title before he passed. You know,
And it didn't work. It didn't work. It didn't.
No, and this is, there's no slight on my end on any of these owners. It's just going back to what I was saying about how most teams have a high and a low and they stick in that range. So if you wanted to find a team that's very interesting this winter with assets that are interesting, like a Fernando Tatis Jr., a Nick Pivetta, because that team only is returning 2 starters. Yu Darvish had UCL surgery, so he's out for the year. Dylan Cease is a free agent. They didn't move him at the deadline. So I think they're only returning 2 of their starting pitchers, Pivetta and King, I think. And their payroll's pretty bloated. And they got long-term deals to Xander Bogaerts, Fernando Tatis Jr., Jake Cronenworth. I mean, they have long-term deals all over the diamond. So that would be the team I would keep an eye on this winter for a surprise move.
Roger?
Yeah, well, that's what Chris Russo said, Steve, that he thought that San Diego could be in that group, to make a bid. Like we were talking about the Dodgers, the 2 New York teams, and the Phillies. But let me ask you about not only the free agency, but, I'm a big proponent of, I'm tired of, as in this case, the Phillies talking about these players that are ready to come up. And then you go through the whole season and they don't bring any of them up. And that just annoys me, because if they are that good, and as we're told they are, and the Phillies had outfield problems this year, as you know, and made some deals. Harrison Bader, was one, and he contributed, but doesn't appear they're going to keep him. So
he's already out on the market.
Okay, yeah, well, that's what I'm saying, and I don't think that they're going to make a bid to get him, to keep him. I really don't. And but I just I don't get it. I mean, if you're so high on these prospects, why wouldn't you at least bring them up? It can't be doing any worse. And by the way, I just read that Johan Rojas is tearing up the Dominican League and doing things that the Phillies wanted him to do. So hopefully, when they get to spring training, he may be one of the guys that has turned it around and could really help them in the outfield. But go ahead.
Well, in statistics, they talk about a 95% confidence interval. When I look at Dominican League stats, I have about a 5% confidence interval. So, take this Dominican play that you always want your guys to be doing well, but don't read too much into it. As far as bringing prospects up, it starts with the man in the dugout. That's the guy that's going to determine, no matter what the scouts say or the front office says, if the manager says, I want the kid will come up. If the manager says, I don't want a kid, Tito Francona is big on, for every rookie you have on the field, subtract 1 to 3 losses from your team for the year. He doesn't like rookies. His mantra was you start the year, you develop a team, and then you bring up your kids to slowly migrate in, because they're going to cost you games. Special kids force their way up. And if the Phillies, no matter how the scouts or the front office or anybody else broadcast a guy that this guy is this or this guy is that, it's up to the player. I'll give you a guy in Philadelphia that was a complete and total wreck, went to drive line, got his arm, and his pitch sequence together, developed a new pitch, came back a different guy, and that was Christopher Sanchez. 3 years ago, Christopher Sanchez was horrible for the Phillies. They were thinking about DFAing him for another move, but they gave him one last chance, and he turned himself around. So the kids in the minors really need to force their way up, because you have a chance to bring a kid up from the minors or trade for Harrison Bader. The manager on that bench is going to say, "Get me Harrison Bader," and that's just the way it works. It is nice when you do find a guy that comes up and contributes, and I'm I'm sure we could probably all dialogue to that team that we followed, that mid-season they brought somebody up that just really elevated the team. But it doesn't happen as often as we'd like. And with today's hype of prospects, that does get frustrating, and I do get it. You hear about, oh, this kid's great in spring training. We can't even keep watching him in April and May and June. He's doing well in AAA, and you say, get him up here, and he doesn't come up, and I get the frustration.
Well, remember, Bader is a perfect example, I think, to be honest with you, because, he's had 3, maybe 4 shots now. I think the Phillies were the 4th team, and 2 of them this year. And it was only the last half of the year, and a little less than that, I said, that he really became a major contributing factor for the Phillies. And then they decided to let him go.
Well, they let him go for now. He reached free agency, and like you said, they haven't really discussed anything, and the parameters of the contract haven't been discussed, and
right.
Teams haven't really, at this point in the off season, guys, most front offices and agents and everybody understand, and especially this year, the primary focus in this first 10 days to 2 weeks after the season ends, especially this year, is you have a lot of managers that have been hired all over baseball. They're taking coaches away from organizations, and organizations need to get coaches replaced. And that's kind of a tumultuous time for front offices because the GMs are involved in that. And, an agent understands that I can't really discuss much with all these GMs right now because I want as many teams in as possible. So we're about a week away from all these coaches, hitting coaches, first base coaches, bench coaches, switching from one team to another, and then the other team needed to interview and bring in a new bench coach or a new first base coach. And then after the GM meetings and maybe another 4 or 5 days, we should really start picking up. So about a week from today, we should really be into the rumor mill should really start churning.
The Phillies were in exactly what you just said. Preston Mattingly, general manager of the Phillies, his father is now the new bench coach for the Phillies.
That's where Don Mattingly went to the Phillies?
Yeah, Don Mattingly, he was brought in today. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, that's very. I'm sorry, you caught me off guard there. I felt very bad. I saw Mattingly left the Blue Jays and decided wanted to spend more time with his family. As the reason for leaving the Blue Jays.
His family may move to Philadelphia.
Gentlemen, you actually got me on that one. This is me being legitimately surprised at breaking news of even a small.
Hey, you hear it here.
Now, is Sam Fold has taken over for Dombrowski at this point?
No. Dombrowski's there. Sam Fold's there. He's like, up there. The general manager, it may be a different title, but okay. Preston Mattingly is basically the GM, and then you've got steps above him. But his father's now the new bench coach.
Well, you guys got me, and that's a good hire. I'm a big fan of Donald Arthur Mattingly.
I am too.
I am too. We all are. What a class guy. What a class guy.
Yeah, good. That's a good baseball. That guy's been in baseball forever. Man, he was right in my, as I was a developing baseball fan, him and Ricky on the Yankees were always so much fun to watch. But, hey, that's good for the Phillies, man. But exactly what I'm saying is like you have to fill these gaps. Bench coaches, first base coaches, and this year more than other years. I think there were 6 or 7 openings at the beginning of the year, and that meant a new manager, new bench coach, a lot of moving parts. So we're about a week away, guys. It should really get interesting going back to Harrison Bader and the Phillies. We'll start hearing who the Phillies are targeting, and the level of player that they're targeting.
Right.
We'll hear that very soon.
Steve, give us a player that you're targeting that you think after all the statistical work that you do, that you think is someone that they really be making a move for.
I would if I'm like looking for pitching, I'm looking at Nick Pivetta.
Right.
I want Nick Pivetta from the Padres. I think that he's gettable. I don't think the price would be too high. Now he has an opt-out at the end of next year and the following year, about $19 million and then $18 million a year, whatever. I like Nick Pivetta. He's very talented, and that's somebody I would be targeting. if I'm on the bat side of things and I'm looking for a bat, I'm probably going to be targeting Bo Bichette because he reminds me of Marcus Semien in the fact that, yes, he's a shortstop, but, you know, you could pay him and move him to second base or third base or, you know, within a year or two. So you're not stuck with just a shortstop, you know. And I think the bat has more pop in it and more development in it. You know, now that he's, you know, he proved last year that the injury's behind him. He's just a solid overall player, and he's the type of right-handed. He's the type of guy that I would be targeting. Would be a Bo Bichette.
Roger?
Yeah, one of the stories that I read is about the deal with the Cardinals for the third baseman. Who I've always thought was a really good player. I'd love to see him. And then, of course, Alec Bone would be, traded away to get somebody else. And I guess they just don't feel that Alec is going. And I love the guy. Okay, he was very nice to my grandson at the Philadelphia Sports Writers. I got great pictures and everything a couple of years ago. And but I guess they just, from everything I read, they just don't have the confidence that he will go to the next step. He's been a very good player. He was hurt this past year, but had good numbers. He does not have the power numbers that I think they want to get from that position at third.
Yeah, it is something. You know, there's certain positions that you still want to have the bat at. You know, the corner outfield, third baseman, first baseman. That's where you want to get your power and your middle of the order bat, and defense up the middle. That seems to be baseball's happy formula, going back to the early 1950s till today. And no matter how many statistics I bring up or anybody brings up, if you follow that model, good defense up the middle and good power on the corners and in the outfield, your team's probably going to be pretty good if you can pitch.
I like that, but I'm going to take my man 60 feet inches from home plate because you don't win without somebody standing out there on the rubber.
Hey, a lot of people know Earl Weaver's famous quote about pitching, defense, and 3-run homer.
Yeah.
And they forget the second part of that quote, which was "and in that order." So everybody focuses on the 3-run homer. You got to hit the 3-run homer. You got to hit the homer. But Earl knew it's pitching, defense, and the 3-run homer in that order.
Yeah. Well, the other thing, Steve, is that look what Baltimore, 2 years ago was in the 100-win category. And they started letting pitchers go, like one to Boston. And what they're by August, they're looking for air. They want to oxygen tent down there.
Well, let's not get on them too much. They traded for a guy making $18.5 million, who gave about 18 starts, and Zach Eflin, who was terrific for them 2 years ago after the trade. I think he was 7-1 with an ERA around 2, and looked poised to be a dominant pitcher at the top of that rotation. You got to remember Grayson Rodriguez didn't throw a pitch for him next year. I mean, that was one of the bright spots of baseball 2 years ago. He didn't throw a pitch for him. The older guy, and I'm blanking on his name. Excuse me. He's a former Ray that went to the Giants, but he threw maybe 2 innings in spring training, then was out for the year. My point is, Baltimore put a lot of money into pitching, and they brought a lot of pitchers in, and then one by one they watched. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And that did.
What was he, 42 today? 42 today, right?
The Charlie Morton thing is a great statistical thing with the saying, and before I get going, and is, teams always have to be leery. The light bulb's always brightest before it burns out. And players are that way. So every year that Morton has a good year, that saying comes up, and the son of a gun will come out and put up another good year. So then you get to the point of, he's going to burn somebody someday. And unfortunately, Baltimore was it.
I think his birthday was today. I think it was 42 today. I think.
Hey, don't forget, guys, that at the end of spring last year, to actually help out because of the injury, they gave $5.5 million to Kyle Gibson to
Hey, Frank.
Hey, how you doing? I apologize. We were running a couple minutes late, but I'll get you right in.
That's okay. Just want to make sure we're going.
Yes, sir.
All right.
How's that baby, by the way?
You know, Baltimore is just like, what can we do?
Well, they have such a great form, or they did have. I don't know. They've had brought up several of the players, and they've been relatively successful. Jackson being one of them, and not as successful as they would have liked, but they have been successful.
And not successful 60 feet 6 inches. They had Grayson Rodriguez, and
right.
And then you take a look at the rest of the injuries. Dean Kramer and John Means. Means 2 years in a row with the elbow. He wasn't there last year, but point being, all the pitching they developed. Kramer and Means and Aiken and all those guys all seem to take a step back on injuries, along with the other guys I mentioned. And comedy of injuries, and it's hard to continue to win when that happens.
Hey, Don, we're joined by Mike Sims. I'm sorry, okay. Mike Schultze.
All right, guys. I'm sorry. I went a little over. I apologize.
No problem, Steve. It's great to talk to you. We learned so much, no doubt.
Thank you very, very much. I always appreciate it, and we all do, Steve. And we'll get you on in another couple of weeks and see whether your prognostication of another week, we're going to have some signings and know what's going on.
Yeah. Apologies to your next guest. I'm sorry.
No problem.
No problem.
Not a problem.
No, you're great.
Now, if I heard Frank correctly on the intercom, Mike Zimzak is going to join us.
No, Don. No, it's Mike Schultze.
Mike Schultze is with us.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I said Mike Zimzak was going to join us. Okay.
Yeah.
Mike Schultze is the man I want to talk to tonight because more important than anything else, we'll talk about the bowls and all the other things. But the coach said after the game it was the greatest game he had ever seen in 32 years of coaching, not only at the college level, but any level, was the Penn State game last Saturday. Your thoughts on that first?
Well, I don't know. There's been a lot of really great games, and there were in fact a few last weekend actually. But that play at the end, obviously the catch. I'm still trying to figure out how that one foot just hovered about an inch above the grass and never came down until the other one came down. That was just a crazy feat of physics there with that catch at the end to win that game. That was once in a lifetime, I guess.
Well, the reason it was so surprising to me was I thought that he would hit more in the air. I didn't think he was going to be able to come down in bounds, but he only got 1 foot in. But in all honesty, I mean, you could really say he got 2 feet in.
Well, the thing, the defender. The thing was, the defender pushed the guy. He didn't push him hard enough. So, I mean, if he pushes him just a little bit harder, he doesn't get that other foot down because the 1 foot never came down. It just was
right.
It was the first one going down, but yet it just hovered about an inch above the grass until the other foot came down and bounced. And it's like if that guy would have just shoved him, with purpose a little bit more, they would have gone the other way. So, but that's what do they say about games of football? It's a game of inches. In this case, 1 inch.
I'll tell you, but not only that, first of all, the completion for 37 yards from after the penalty, and then the completion out of bounds, and then the third pass completion was to the end zone. I agree with the coach. I saw him do a lot of great things when he was coaching James Madison, but I'll tell you what he's done there has been just remarkable.
Yeah. Well, they've done a great job there, obviously, right? And the players they have, the quarterback has done a phenomenal job there. You can't take anything away from them. They're playing great, and so it's going to be real interesting if they end up potentially playing Ohio State in the conference championship game. Man, that's going to be a heck of a game, and I'm not sure who I would pick to win that game at this point.
I don't agree. I couldn't agree more. Go ahead, Roger.
No, Mike. There have been so many great games, and what we saw in the NFL a lot on Sunday. Monday night we talked about it earlier. The Eagles and the Packers. I mean, that was a defensive brawl, so to speak. If you love defense, that's what you want to see. But talking to a lot of my friends that are obviously Georgia, Alabama fans, the Southeast Conference, we'll even say, it seems with a college game, there's so much more action, and the play is so much quicker because it seems like there's so many delays in the pros and timeouts because of commercials and everything. Is my opinion right or wrong about this?
Well, as a fan of college football, I mean, I agree with you. I think the thing, the NFL, there's could be a lot of factors here, but the NFL is set up. It's all under one league, right? Operation. So it's basically set up for all the teams to be, hopefully pretty even. It's like NASCAR, right? You all have to have the same kind of car. Now you can be a better driver, you can have a better strategy, and maybe you can tweak things here and there. But the basis of it is supposed to be all pretty much set up even, right? And in the NFL, it's sort of the same thing. You get the salary cap, so everybody has only so much to spend on players, and the rosters aren't that big, and everybody tends to sort of gravitate to whoever wins the Super Bowl, whatever kind of offense they run, that kind of thing. So pretty soon everybody's doing the same kind of thing and all that. In college, I think there's just so much more diversity, and certainly there is in regards to obviously the size of schools, traditions, the different conferences have sort of different cultures, right, in regards to how those programs, play from generally speaking. And again, and of course the transfer portal, of course, that we talked about, all year, is really even things out quite a bit. But at the same time, it's been a situation where, there's always, every week it seems like there's upsets, there's surprises. Every year there's Cinderella teams and all that you don't really have, I don't think, in the NFL that much. So. Yes, anybody in the NFL could beat anybody in a given week, because they're all generally fairly even. Outside of maybe who has, like one of the top quarterbacks or something like that or whatever. But in college, I think it's just so much more diverse in regards to level of talent or whatever, and even just from week to week, and that's why, every year we've talked about how, like, can you believe how many upsets there were last weekend? That kind of thing. And you just don't seem to have that. You have it once in a while, a surprising game in the NFL, but I think the NFL is a little bit more consistent with regard to, better teams win pretty much all the time. And in college, you could go, a good example, you take the Oregon, going into Kinnick Stadium at Iowa last week. Teams go to there to die all the time, ranked teams, because for whatever reason, you don't go in there and get an easy win ever. And, and they were, a few seconds away from losing, to Iowa in that stadium. But so many teams, that happens to them, right? And it's just like, in the college, you have those types of venues, you have those types of teams where, every time you play in a particular place, or you play a whiteout game at Penn State, it's never going to be easy, that kind of thing. So, yeah, I think you have a lot more of that in the college game than you do in the pros.
Mike Schulte, our special guest this segment, and of course, Mike, an expert on college football. And let's take a minute before we get into the middle of another question. Let's give your bowl a little bit of a conversation, because it seems to me, Mike, that there could be 20 or 25 teams that are going to be relatively close to being where in playoff competition. We got a lot of good teams to talk about.
Yeah, there is. In our game, of course, we have the Big Ten and SEC teams in our game, and there's, of course, an awful lot of them. Those two leagues obviously highly dominate the top 25 rankings right now. So, yeah, and some names in there that you don't typically see this time of year in contention, like obviously the Indianas, the Vanderbilts, and so forth. But yeah, there's so many good teams right now out there, and they're right now, of course, they're all vying. A lot of those teams are vying to get into the 12-team playoff. But it's going to be really interesting to see these next 3 weeks. The last 3 weeks of the season are always important, right? But these next 3 weeks, there's some really, really key games that are going to determine, who gets in the playoff and such. I mean, you got, Georgia playing Texas this week, I believe, and you got Alabama and Oklahoma is going to be really key for both those teams. And then I know Texas still has to play Texas A&M, who might just be the number one team in the country, but they still got to get through Texas in a couple weeks. So that's going to, who knows what's going to happen with that. So there's a lot of, key games there. And then a couple of these other conferences, the Big 12, the ACC right now doesn't have anybody ranked in the top 12, but, it's going to be interesting to see. I don't even know who exactly is expected to be in their conference championship game, because they just sort of keep beating up on each other. So, right when you thought that, Miami is going to run the gamut, they drop a couple games, and then, Georgia Tech, is right there, SMU and Virginia. So, it's these last couple of weeks is really going to shuffle the deck quite a bit. And it's hard to know who's going to come out on top, but definitely a lot of good football, a lot of good teams out there. And again, I think going back to the portal and the NIL, there is a lot more parity in college football now, and so you can't. It's really hard to look at a schedule, even with 3 weeks left in the season, and sort of point out what teams' records are going to be in the next 3 games, because there's as we say, every week something happens we don't expect.
Well, you said Alabama and Oklahoma is going to be a big game this weekend. Texas is going to be a big game. So there are a lot of big games on the docket. Roger, you're up.
Well, and I agree, Mike. You don't know about the ACC because, we expected big things because of the way Georgia Tech was playing, undefeated, and then they lose to NC State. That really got all the Tech fans way down in this area. I can tell you that. Friends of mine that are high school coaches, he really was down. But
Georgia's a 6.5-point choice this weekend against Texas, Roger.
Yeah, well, that is surprising. I thought that it would be a little bit closer, but it's a home game for the Dogs. But then Georgia and Georgia Tech, that's their last game of the year.
Right.
So a lot will happen. But my question, Mike, is, and where did this season?
Tennessee's going to be big too.
That's a big one too. But where did this season go? It seems like it was yesterday it started, and here we are now down towards the end of the season. It's unbelievable how fast this season has gone by for me.
Yeah, it really is. It's gone by way too quick. We always say that, of course, but yeah, it just seems like it's and I'm not really sure why, but certainly there's so many surprises this year. So much shuffling of the rankings. Like I said, a number of new faces, so to speak, in the top 10. So that I don't know if that's contributed to that or not, but man, it's gone way too quick. So a few more games left, though. We got to enjoy this month, the rest of this month, and until we get to the conference championship games. And I think it is, though, really setting up. It seems to me that in my recollection, typically by now you sit there and you say, okay, especially back in the day when you had a 14 playoff, right? You're like, well, you pretty much know who 3 of those teams are going to be. There's like 2 or 3 teams where it's like, okay, those guys are the top, right? And nobody's going to touch them. And it just sort of seems right now, I wouldn't, I don't know who, if there is a team that's unbeatable right now. I mean, out there. And what's going to be really interesting is we talk about these conference championship games, these big rivalry games at the end of the season, right, that we just mentioned. Not only are those, really going to be, almost toss-ups, right? When you get into the playoff, I mean, I just, like I said, I'm not confident of picking a team that I think is going to just run through the playoffs. I think every team that's going to get in the playoffs has a very, very likely chance of potentially losing, at some point in the playoffs. I mean, it is a tough road, especially now that you have to win 3 or maybe 4 games, to win the national championship, as opposed to in the past you only had to win 2. It's going to be a really gauntlet this year, because I just don't see anybody that you look at and you sit there and say, well, they could beat any team they play. So I don't know if there's a team out there like that this year.
Well, Mike, let's ask this question, and that is the President of the United States wants very powerful caps put on college athletics so the salaries can now be split around and universities can keep more teams participating in lesser sports. And he looks like he's taking the front load. We talked about last year that how many players left between the end of the season and the starting of the bowl games or whatever, and everybody anticipates what's going to happen. And then if the star players aren't there, it's a different game. So I think, first of all, they have to address that immediately. And then secondly, they've got to put a cap on this amount of money that they're giving these kids, especially all the way down to 9th and 10th grade.
Yeah. Well, they're working on putting some guardrails on it. I don't know about a cap. They do have a cap on regards to that they've instilled this year, along with the revenue sharing for the universities. So each university can spend, I believe this year it's about up to $21 million on their athletes. So that's a direct revenue share, which is something they should have done years ago, and we wouldn't be in this. Then you have the NIL, which they're just trying. The NIL is still allowed, but they're trying to make that more consistent and more not standardized per se, but more realistic in regards to actual name, image, and likeness. Because what it became under the guise of NIL, of name, image, likeness, was pay for play. Come to our school, we'll pay you this much money. And that's not what the NIL was set up to do. It was set up to have, for legitimate purposes of athletes that had the ability through their celebrity and popularity, or in some cases outside not investments, but businesses on the side, whatever, to make money. So a Caitlin Clark, for instance, who has millions of followers and is one of the top players in women's college basketball, would be able to sign a deal with Nike a shoe deal with Nike, right? That's what the NIL was supposed to be. It wasn't supposed to be about, Joe Smith, 5-star out of Gainesville, getting money to go play in Alabama. That kind of thing, before, and get paid money before anybody knows who he is. So they're trying to fix that, and I'm hopeful that they'll be able to do that. The biggest thing they're fighting is lawsuits that people will throw up anytime they try and instill a rule. They face a lawsuit, so they have to do it in such a way that they can win a lawsuit that might get filed against them. And so it's going to be, I think, a little bit of a longer process than we'd like to have. I will say the one thing that they have fixed this year, which I think will be helpful for the postseason a bit, is that they eliminated one of the windows, the portal windows for football. They now just have one portal window for football transfers, and that's going to take place beginning, I believe, January 2nd. So.
I'll put you right into the system, sir.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Right at the end of the regular season,
and actually the day after the bowl games were announced, the portal window opened up for these kids. So a lot of them were jumping in there immediately after that. But now this year, that portal window doesn't open until basically after all the bowl games, and with the exception of the semifinals and finals of the playoff. And those teams, the players on those teams, will have a separate window that'll open after they're done playing. So that's going to really help, I think, a lot in regards to players not jumping in, obviously not being able to jump in a portal. Now they may in their minds already have an idea that they want to leave and go somewhere else, but they can't officially jump into a portal, until after in this case, the bowl game. So I think that'll help a little bit with the postseason, because I know last year there were some teams in the playoff that were losing players to the portal.
Absolutely.
And had they had key injuries, they wouldn't have backups to play. So that's one of the reasons that's one of the reasons they sort of fixed that timing.
And I think they're also going to have the power from the top now. The president gets in, as he says, he wants to see changes made in the way it's being run right now. Roger, you're up.
Yeah, I agree. Mike, do you agree with that about the president getting involved?
The president really doesn't have any control over something like this. So there's some bills in Congress that have been floated, but as we see with our government, it's hard. They can't really agree on what day it is. So I don't know how. I wouldn't be too overly optimistic that that's going to happen. But you never know. I mean, hopefully, something down the road. The things I think are going to be helpful. I think the biggest thing is, like you said, is they have to be able to do stuff, because there's so many anymore. Like you said, every time that someone tries to institute a law or a rule in college sports, somebody is out there trying to sue to stop it. And we need to get more public opinion or whatever on the same page to say, look, how about let's do what's good for all these athletes and all these sports, and not just sue every time, because you got to have some rules in place for some of this stuff, and because every time you do stuff like that, or you end up with no rules, then a lot more people get hurt by it than get helped by it. Some of these situations are causing schools to drop sports. You could potentially have fewer opportunities for women's sports and some of the Olympic sports and things like that by allowing like you said, the money in football and basketball and things like that to get so out of hand that schools are they're gonna get rid of other sports in order to have to be to compete, and that's not good for anybody. So hopefully they can things will work itself out here over the next couple of years.
Roger, you were talking about the youngsters down in Atlanta or in the Georgia area. They were being contacted in 9th and 10th grade about getting this money.
Yeah. Well,
Hey, Mike, how you doing?
Doing good.
I'm going to put you right in.
Not necessarily right in our area here, but the highest paid person in this school district was a great football player on the team, the high school team. And that's number one. And the other thing that has a number of coaches upset in this area was about in girls basketball. I happen to know the player because I had her in middle school, but she was supposed to go to one school in the county, and that was her district. And then she wound up going to another school that made it to the finals 2 years ago in the state championship in girls basketball. Last year they lost in the semis. 2 weeks ago, she transferred from that school to another school in the county. And of course now there is a lot of speculation about hanky-panky. And I'm thinking it could be, I had met her parents last year at playoff games, and I'm just wondering how much the parents interfered with this. I don't know. All I know is she went from a really good team to a team I don't know not that much about, but everybody is really shocked that this is going on, because some people remember the old days. If you transferred from one school to another, we saw it in New Jersey. I mean, Don knows about this like I do. You had to sit out sometimes a year.
Absolutely.
Okay, when you transferred. And obviously that's not the case here, but I'm concerned, Mike, that this thing is just evolving more and more into the high school area.
Yeah, and well, again, right? They send a copy to colleges, right? And again, it used to be in college that you transferred. If you transferred, you had to sit out a year. Okay,
Right.
They dropped that and they said, okay, you can transfer one time for free, meaning you don't have to sit out. But then if you transfer a second time, then you have to sit out a year. Well, that was challenged in court, and they found some judge somewhere who said, "Oh, you can't do that." So now what we have is guys, athletes in every sport now going. In some cases, they can go to a different school every year, and there's nothing in the world. And you can say, obviously, a lot of money in college sports now, and they're getting paid and all this stuff. The whole thing about student athlete and all that. But you sure can't have a student athlete who goes to 5 different schools in 5 years, to play a sport. That's not even anything to do with a student athlete, right? I mean, that's just ridiculous. So,
Yeah.
But again, it's because they had a rule. They tried to work with schools, players, and say, okay, we're going to give you one free transfer because maybe you made a mistake where you went, whatever. But now it's like, oh no, you can go to a different school every year, and the chaos that provides for the program, for the athletes, and not to mention the fact that now these athletes are encouraged the grass is greener, right? It's like, and so every year it's like any player, they don't like the coach, they don't like the assistant coach.
They get you to knock you off, Mike? Come on. The hell? Come on, get back there. Shit. Hello? Okay, hold on. Let me put you back in. Do it, Mike. I'll call you right back. Oh, shit.
Don had.
Yep, we had a failure on the phone. Yep. All right, we're back with 2.
Okay. Is Mike still with us?
Yeah. No.
Oh, good.
No, the phone went off for some reason. So you got to try and get. Okay. Well, we got Mike Simsack and Doug ready
Mike,
to go.
was making a point about something I said. I didn't know what he.
Yeah, I'll get him back on. Hold on.
Well, as I say, it's an ongoing topic that we've talked about really since the end of last season, especially when, as Mike is.
All right, back in.
The really key players that decided to step back and not take a chance on injury after they played the whole year for a particular school and were ready to go to the playoffs in the bowl game. and then decided not to participate. And
Hey, Frank, got cut off
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
All right.
Sorry about that. We just shut down. I'll get you back on.
been changed now.
Go ahead, Don. Mike's back.
Mike is back with us?
Yep.
Yeah, I was just saying.
Sorry about that. I broke your computer.
Yeah.
I thought it was me, Mike.
Well, I just wanted to be sure that had been clarified, because I just thought that was an embarrassment to the schools, to the coaching staff, to their teammates, to everybody involved in college sports, to have a
Okay, now we're on.
back to come in and participate and be at the same level. So I couldn't be happier.
I just saw a thing the other day that they listed about 10 players, and there's probably a lot more, who were getting. They're in the NFL now. They took pay cuts to go to the NFL.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? Yeah, but that's a fact. It's amazing.
Yeah. Don, we got Mike and Doug ready.
How out of whack it is,
Exactly.
And again, I'm all for player. I think players. I think every athlete should get money beyond their books, tuitions, all that kind of stuff that they used to get. I absolutely am in favor of them getting and revenue sharing with the player with athletes, across the board at the universities, because what they go through is very special and very, very difficult. Being an athlete at a major college school, but like I said, just throwing money at kids that has no rhyme or reason as to what the basis is for the money is just gotten pretty crazy.
No question about that. But at the same time, the other kids at that school are paying, $75,000 to $100,000 a year to go to school, and they're going for free. So I mean, they're getting a lot of perks right off the bat with all the housing that they get, the food allowance that they get.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
But to give them, like you said, but the thing is the difference though is that if you're making money, I use the Tim Tebow example. I've used that for years.
Okay.
When Tim Tebow was at Florida, okay, and everybody was buying Tim Tebow jerseys, okay. Because he was the man, right? So if you're buying a jersey with a player's name on it, that player should get a royalty for that from that jersey sale,
Absolutely.
just like the school gets a royalty. So that's what I'm saying. You share that revenue for anything that's tied into that player or that individual. Those kinds of things can be done very easily and should have been done a long time ago. And that's what I'm saying. Where you have maybe a $5,000 stipend beyond their books and tuition and all that, so that they can go out and have pizza and do stuff to travel home during break or things like that. And then beyond that, if you're using their name for like merchandise sales and things like that, then they should get some kind of royalty type of revenue and stuff. So that's what I'm saying. I mean, you can do it in such a way that makes a lot of sense, but without just saying, well, we want to outbid this other school, so you come here to play, and we're going to give you $3 million because we got a big booster that will give us a blank check, and we can buy you to come to our school instead of going to another school. That's not a name, image, and likeness. That's not revenue sharing based on what you're doing to generate revenue. That's just buying players to come in as like free agents, and then you do that, and then they're allowed to transfer out whenever they want to each year. That doesn't make sense either, right? So you've got to have a system in place that says, okay, well, if we are going to pay you, and you are going to come here, we're going to pay a bunch of money, then you're committed to the school, and you're not going to leave, and and just go to another school after 1 year.
I agree with that 100%. And Roger, you were talking about earlier, and so was Frank before we went on the air. I mean, now LSU is contesting. Their board of regents had hired Kelly as their head coach and still owe $52 million, somewhere around that number. And now they want to sue to say they don't want to pay that. Well, wait a minute. How can you do that? If you're a university and your board of directors has set aside through the boosters or whoever the money came from, that you owe them $52 million, you owe $52 million, don't you?
Yeah, well, don't fire him then, right?
Exactly what I had said. You know what the repercussions are going to be.
Hey, Don.
Well, yeah, I guess they're trying to. I don't know the case, so I'm not going to, say who's right or wrong. But from what I read, it's just there's an interpretation that they're saying, well, they didn't technically fire him, but at the same time, if you, I don't know what happened, but maybe, if it's a situation where they say, well, you have to do this or you're gone. And he says, I'm not doing that, then that's pretty much the same as being fired in my mind. But I don't know the details of it. But yeah, it's just, there's so many weird things going on.
Back to the courts.
Yeah, courts and money. That's usually the root cause of most of the problems around it, isn't it?
Yeah, Mike. We talk. Hey, Don. We have talking about money. We have two money people waiting to go. The one guy makes a lot of money as a golf master professional, and the other guy is a professor.
That's right, professor. Yeah.
Sure.
Mike, take care. Have a great week. Okay.
You too, guys.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks for the week and enjoy the week. Take care now.
You too. Take care.
Now, have we got the two guys on together?
Yes, sir.
Mike and Doug both on with us now?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. And I want to compliment both of you guys because Mike took a lot of time during the 3 or 4 weeks before the season started, going into the season, talking about the Commanders and what their strengths and weaknesses would be, and that the defense would be one of their weaknesses. But more importantly, how about the quarterback getting hurt, who was so successful last year in his freshman year? And Doug, on the other hand, was saying one thing about the Ravens is that they got through the tough part of the schedule. Yeah, they lost 3 in a row, but now they're coming up on a soft part of the schedule, and they're going to climb back in. Now, I understand Jackson didn't practice again today because of the knee, but you guys were both correct. Washington is having all kinds of trouble with defense and winning games, and their quarterback is out. And, Doug, you were right. Harbaugh got through those 3 days, and now he's won a couple of games in a row. So you're both were right on target.
Well, first and foremost, Don, it's nice to have you back. Hope that you're doing better and recuperating.
Thank you.
Secondly, happy Veterans Day to all of you gentlemen who are on the panel and anybody else who's listening.
Great day yesterday. We had a tribute at the top of the show, and Frank, of course, will continue to do those tributes to not only the reserves and active soldiers that have been in participation for the last 100 years. He'll keep doing it for every show. Go ahead, Doug.
Was there a question proposed?
No, I'm just talking about the Ravens. You made the point that we're going to bounce back. You got a quarterback that's a little banged up again. He didn't practice today. Is he okay first?
Yeah, I think it's just, general soreness in terms of rest. And,
okay.
I think once you get to a certain point in the season, I think they like to give scheduled off days to, allow some recuperation. I think that coming up here, the Ravens will get another short week in another week or so. So I think they're kind of looking forward to getting people healthy, keeping people healthy, and, taking advantage of, as we mentioned, the potential softer version of schedule here.
Mike, how about the Commanders? How do they stand with their quarterback right now?
The alarm went off, Mike. They did not put him on IR. They said it could be something as short as a 4-week injury. So potentially we could see him back, but I don't know under what circumstances they're thinking of bringing him back. Where would they have to be? If they're out of it, do you risk him? Do you let him sit? It's clear that he wasn't in rhythm. The injuries and not playing much in the preseason had gotten him out of his rhythm, and he was not having a really good sophomore season. And then all the injuries that made it hard for Gaten to get started. And so maybe you want to give him something to go into the all season and the next season with. But given the nature of how many times he's been injured this season, you kind of also could see the and if there's nothing to be played for, there might be a virtue to just sitting him down and saying, you know what, live to fight another day.
Yeah. So I don't know whether you saw it or not, but the big bone of contention in New York for the firing of the Giant coach was that, they were out of the game and they let the quarterback, who eventually had a concussion, who was their young future, and they let him come back and play. And so that was one of the major factors about why the coach was fired. But at Washington, certainly, as you know, Mike, better than anyone, they did that with G3, 10 years ago when they let him play in a playoff game, and his knee went out forever, and he never was a player again. So, I mean, they got to be pretty careful, I would think, right now.
That's a lot of what people are feeling is the remembrance of what happened to RG3. I think the situations are a little bit different in what RG3 was trying to do, and then also who RG3 was, as opposed to Jaden Daniels. But, the people have some residual strong feelings about that. Here was a game where you were clearly out of it. He had just come back from injury. You left him in, and he gets hurt again, potentially for the season. Fortunately, it's his non-throwing arm, but there's a lot of that, and I can understand why people are a little bit nervous.
Doug, how about Jackson? Is he now he laid out 3 and came back last week? How about his performance, and what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the Ravens are a different football team with him, as their quarterback. I think Derrick Henry is a much better player with him at the helm. I think that, their offensive, receivers and backs and tight ends are a much more effective core unit. I think that Huntley was serviceable. Cooper Rush was awful. So, I mean, they're a different football team. I think, if we can get the defense kind of fixed a little bit, I think there's a lot of football teams that don't want to play us. I can tell you that.
Roger?
Wanted to both of you, but it's about the injuries, bringing them, back, especially concussions. I wanted, but with the Commanders, it's not that, okay? It can be injuries, but let me ask you, Mike, what's the temperature in our nation's capital about the offensive calls on the Commanders?
I don't think anybody has a problem with the offensive calls because they're realizing that Cliff Kingsbury is doing the best that he can with what he has. He's got a seventh-round running back, Debo Samuels, Zach Ertz, and 3 sets of an offensive line, and that's about it. So nobody is expecting him to do much more than he is doing. The bigger issue in within the Beltway is the defense. Joe Witt Jr. has good play calling. First, he made the move down from the press box to the field. They said it was because the players were asking him to be closer to the field so that they could make adjustments. They did this. Again, they lost by 20. So it's the 4th straight game they've lost by 20-plus points. And Dan Quinn said that he's going to take over defensive play calling moving forward. So it is not looking good. And, for Joe Witt Jr.'s future as the defensive coordinator of the Commanders, and they're the one, that's the unit, and probably that gets the most blame for what's going on right now.
Mike, got a question for Doug?
Yeah, well, just to follow up with what Mike was saying about calling from the field, I see more and more defensive coordinators calling the plays from the press box, or the coach's box. Vic Fazio is doing that with the Eagles, and I can remember in the heyday of Andy Reid's tenure when Jim Johnson was the defensive coordinator. It wasn't Jim Johnson that was sending in the plays. I don't even know whether they were using an intercom for defense in those days, but it was Sean McDermott that was calling, signaling in the plays when he was the defensive backs coach. So, and there's a lot of success both ways. The whole key is you got to have the right tools or players to be successful. That's the bottom line. Doug?
Yeah, I mean, there's different styles. I think we've reached a point in this season where you're going to start, seeing coaches fall by the wayside as scapegoats, because they're likely getting pressure from, ownership and whatnot to, win. I'm back to Jaden Daniels. I don't particularly think you'll see him play another snap this year for the Commanders. I don't think they're gonna. I mean, I think they play Miami this week. That's a game they could possibly win. But Mike probably has a better temperature than I do. But I don't think there's a lot of optimism amongst the Commanders fans with regard to the product they have on the field. And why would we bring him back to get hurt again or whatever? To win one or two more games, that just doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
I think that's the prevailing wisdom, but again, we're not in the locker room. I'm not on the coaching staff. I see that, but I'm not getting paid to talk to y'all on Wednesday. Well, Dan Quinn is making the big bucks to make these decisions. So ultimately, it's his decision, and it's going to be his career as to whether or not they bring him back and put him out there and risk injury again, or whether they just let him go for this season and say, all right, do your practice reps, get your reps in get your virtual reps in, and we'll just go back and do this again. I think the worst thing that could happen to them is that they win a couple of games. They've got the Vikings and coming up after the bye and Miami, and they win 2 or 3 games and all of a sudden think that they're back in it, rush him back out there, and then miss the playoffs, but aren't bad enough to draft in the top 10, top 15 in the draft. So not only do you have a missing season, but you're not bad enough to get the rewards.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that makes total sense. From my perspective, not necessarily being a Commanders fan, I mean, they played way over their heads last year, and I think that unfortunately, the expectations this year, I think, were a little bit unreasonable in terms of where they could likely be, on the heels of last year. And then fast forward to where we are now, and, you would think it's, the sky's falling. So, I think switching back to Baltimore, I think it's reasonable to think that, they can continue winning and hopefully having, a healthy roster, find their way in the playoffs here. So,
Fellas, I'm always in favor of protecting the player. I don't think you bring anybody back that's only partially repaired, whatever the damage was. I think you let them sit out the extra week, 2 weeks, or whatever it takes. And certainly with a quarterback that they have from last year is going to come back and play much better if he doesn't have to go through a secondary injury at the end of the season with no chance to have a playoffs or do anything. I think that's silly.
A lot of people agree with you, Don. it ultimately is going to come down to Adam Peters, the coaching staff, and what they have on the line and how they're feeling about this,
Right.
and how they're feeling about this season. And they're the ones who are most in the firing squad. I mean, I talked about Joe Witt Jr. and how poorly the defense has been, but a lot of blame is starting to find its way to Adam Peters because a lot of the issue with the team is how it was constructed. You look up the road in Baltimore and Doug's territory and Ravens country, they had injuries. They were able to withstand them. They have a team that's built with a core and has been built through free agency and set with the draft and upgraded with the draft. You know, it's hard to find out what the Commanders' core is. They knew that they had some glaring weaknesses coming into the season, especially the pass rush, which they did not address. And the chances of running it back with one of the oldest teams in the league was always going to be an iffy proposition. That was where they chose to go. Those were the decisions that Adam Peters made in free agency. His trades, especially giving up, multiple draft picks for Marshawn Lattimore hasn't worked. And so, they've got to put something together or else it's going to be a very, very long and vocal offseason for them.
Doug, the same situation with the Ravens. Unfortunately, they were stricken with injuries as well. Now seem to have righted the ship a bit. Are you encouraged by what's happening now?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, we had tangential discussions on here about should the Ravens be sellers at the trade deadline, and should we? I think Eric DeCosta pretty much stood pat and did a couple minor things to hopefully induce a better pass rush. So I mean, from where we stand now, obviously we need to let the season continue to play out. They play the Browns, I think, this week. I think they play the Jets the following. So, I mean, there's, reason for optimism here that we can continue to string together some wins. And then ultimately, it would come down to, the head-to-head matchups that exist within the conference. We have to still play the Steelers twice. We still have to play the Bengals, which likely will get Joe Burrow. So we'll see how that manifests itself. But I think, again, there's, things are looking up here.
Roger?
If I had a bucket list, there's so many things I'd like to accomplish in my life. And but I think what would be great if they could do it every year. Of course, with scheduling you can't, but would be to have the Ravens and the Commanders. Where you have these local rivalries, the Jets, the Giants, the Chargers, and the Rams. Things like that, or games like that. I don't know what you guys think, but I think it would really the NFL doesn't need probably any more interest. They make a lot of money, but I just think it would be interesting.
Roger, they do, I know, try and make sure that they play in the preseason, but that's the preseason.
Right. That doesn't mean anything.
But it doesn't mean anything. The funny thing is, and I Doug will probably agree with this, it's cool when it happens, but I don't think that the Commanders are really neither side gets particularly up to play the other side. Even in the regular season, we try and make a big deal out of it. But when you think about it, since the Ravens have been in Baltimore, the Commanders haven't been particularly good. So it's not like there's been any sort of rivalry or competition because the Ravens have just been such a better team over the course of that time frame that I don't even think locally the rivalry ever quite developed the way that people think it would.
Yeah, I mean, the out-of-conference concept, I think diminishes the value of playing them head-to-head. I mean, I think anybody would tell you that, for the Ravens, as a Ravens fan, I mean, I hate the Browns, I hate the Bengals, and I hate the Steelers the worst. But any one of those three teams that we play, and that's 6 games of our season is, that's I hate you 6 times. Like if you're a Commanders fan, you root for the Commanders and anybody that plays against Dallas, Philly, or the Giants, right? So, it just, to me, Washington doesn't seem like, if we played them, we played them. Like, it doesn't really matter to me. You know what I mean? Like, I don't view that as a rivalry.
We're almost running out of time here. I just want to ask most people that listen to the program on a regular basis know that Mike is a soccer expert, and I want to ask him right now about Roldan, because looks like he's on the fringes of the USMNT, and as we look forward to the United States playing, and he was going to sit down and wasn't going to play for. They didn't know he was ever going to have a chance to be on the team, and now they're saying he's going to be. What did he do to change his perspective?
Part of it is you get some playing time for your club and have a good season, and then the other part is you come in when you have the opportunity in friendlies and play well. Christian Roldan was one of those guys. He'd been on the fringes of the team. He'd been in the team. He'd been out of the team. He'd been back on the fringes. He had looked like somebody who was not going to make it, but then through injury to players playing in similar positions in his own form, and especially capitalizing on opportunities in the recent games that we've had, he's played himself back into contention and looks like somebody who could be in the team for the World Cup. We've got 2 games coming up in this window, which will be the last 2025. And then it's not again. They'll have the January camp, which is an unofficial camp, and then it's not again until the spring. So basically, we're into maybe the last 8 games that the U.S. men's national team will play before they start World Cup competition.
Okay, I just wanted to get that in because it was a major story in the New York Post today that, with total surprise, they thought he was going to sit down and then maybe he would be involved in the team at all. And now all of a sudden it looks like he's not only a fringe player, but he's going to be a player that's going to be there. Before we leave the football front, Doug, you said that the upcoming schedule, and you named 2 of the next 3 teams, they're certainly looking, when you look at the Jets, you certainly have to look at, they've won 2 in a row, but that doesn't mean too much, I don't think. But they're certainly in a position that they can put together a little string here.
Yeah, it certainly looks good on paper to, let's see, we play the Browns, we play the Jets, and we unfortunately come back on a short week against the Bengals, which likely will have Joe Burrow.
Now that's going to be tough.
We go Steelers, Ravens, Patriots. That's a tough schedule there. Steelers rather, Bengals, Patriots. Execution's key here. If we can win the next, 2 games, that puts us a little bit close to the top here. The Steelers certainly haven't looked real good. In recent
terrible.
Games.
They look terrible this week.
We play them December 7th at M&T Bank, and then we'll see what happens.
Well, we said earlier that the surprise team, when you think about it in the AFC East, the Patriots. I don't think anybody thought that the new coach and everything else would materialize, rookie quarterback, et cetera, would materialize like it has. And it's rejuvenated, obviously, the fans in New England.
Mike, what's the upcoming schedule now for Washington? Hello?
Mike?
I guess
he must have hung up.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah, he must have hung up.
Until it was all over. It's 5 after 9. I was waiting for you to say tick, 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 but
I wanted to add, but since we took so long with the other 2 guys, I was just added the time on here.
Yeah, that was good. Yeah.
Yeah, we're done. We're just about to at that time.
Okay, Frank, what a nice job. Our executive producer, Frank Carroll, as always, at the controls. Roger's down there in Atlanta. I'm here in New Jersey. Of course, Doug and Mike are both in the in the South region in Baltimore, Washington, and Roy's in Tampa. So we had a great night tonight. Thank you very much. Close us out.
All right.
Right.
Ladies
Have
and
a wonderful week. God bless.
Ladies and gentlemen, these programs are brought to you each and every night of the week in grateful appreciation to the men and women of the United States Armed Forces, the men and police fire services. When you're out there and you see somebody in uniform, please let them know you know they're there. These programs are dedicated to those who've lost their lives in the line of duty. Deputy Robert Anthony Carroll, Patrolman David Curtis, Patrolman Jeffrey Yazwitz, Sergeant Thomas Bager, San Diego Officer Mike Henler, Sergeant Tom Wilson, Charlotte County Sheriff's Department, Detective Ray Bell, Detective Ricky Childers, Patrolman Charlie Condit, Tarpon Spring Police Department, Deputy Chief Mike Godwin, Philadelphia Fire Department, Lieutenant Joyce Craig Lewis, Philadelphia Fire Department, Sergeant James O'Connor, Philadelphia Police Department, Sergeant Chris LeVay, Hillsborough County Sheriff's Department, Lieutenant Mike Zerba, Newcastle County Police, Patrolman Onafo Crispin, Lakeland PD, Deputy Josh Meyer, Nassau County Sheriff's Department, Captain Matt Letourneau, Philadelphia Fire Department, Captain Chris Leach, Wilmington Fire Department, Lieutenant Ardith Hope, Wilmington Fire Department, Lieutenant Jerry Ficus, Wilmington Fire Department, Chief Jimmy Ford, Wilmington Fire Department, Chief Al Hogle, Longboat Key Police Department, Deputy Mike Hargrove, Pinellas County Sheriff's Department, Trooper Chelsea Richards, Florida Highway Patrol, Trooper Joe Bullock, Florida Highway Patrol, Trooper Zachary Ben, Florida Highway Patrol, Sergeant Chris Fitzgerald, Philadelphia Police Department, Sergeant Ramon Mendez, Philadelphia Police Department, Chief Corey Compontier, Buffalo Creek Fire Department, Deputy Ronnie Ronaninsky, Manatee County Sheriff's Department, and Patrolman Zachary Butterfield, Bradenton PD. My brothers and sisters, though you may be 10-7 at this point in time, sometime we'll be 10-10 at the table of the Lord. Until that time, may the rose rise up to meet you. May the winds be always at your back. May the rains fall softly on your fields and the sun shine lightly on your face. Until we meet again, may the good Lord keep you and your family always in the palm of his hands. Good night, God bless, and have a great week.